How to Improve Absolutely Anything by Katie Labedz. Chapter 12, Fishy Fishy in a Brook, Fishbone Diagram. Let's go fishing for another tool. Do you like structure, but not too much? Maybe you feel comfortable following directions, but you also like to do your own thing. You prefer an open parking lot with lots of choices, rather than parking in a field at the fairground and trying to line up with all the cars around you when nobody has lines to guide them. You hang some of your clothing on hangers, but you have your own system for the ones that are supposed to be hung up, like sweatshirts. You fold them nicely and put them in a drawer. Does that sound like you? You're going to love using a fishbone diagram if you thought, yes, that's me. If not, then please just humor me and listen on. The fishbone diagram is halfway between the mind map and the affinity diagram for those that need a little more structure and find comfort with a little more direction when dumping out your brains. Remember when we discussed how people learn and their preferences for your family or team? This appeals to the people in the middle. They like to be creative. However, they need a little more structure to get and help spark their ideas. A fishbone diagram, also called an Ishikawa diagram or a cause and effect diagram, is a structured brainstorming tool. A fishbone diagram allows you to dump out your ideas just like a mind map, but it provides structure with already named categories, unlike an affinity diagram. And guess what? The format of the tool is in the shape of a fish. Imagine that. The fishbone diagram is straightforward and easy to use. It's a visual tool that involves the team to brainstorm ideas on a situation or problem. And we have begun by understanding the problem that we're trying to solve or the topic that we're there to discuss. Let's start with a simple example. Pretend you own a coffee shop and you've started to review your coffee sales. Here's the problem statement you created. Our regular coffee has had the lowest sales out of all of our coffees in the last 6 months. Customer feedback gives us a 1-star rating out of 5 stars. We need to increase our sales and quality for our regular coffee as it's our highest margin product. Start by drawing the diagram on a whiteboard or a big piece of paper. Bring your team members to help brainstorm ways to fix the problem. Remember, no idea is a bad idea. The head of the fish is the problem or topic, also called the effect. The bones of the fish are predefined categories: man, method, machine, mother nature, measure, and materials. As you brainstorm your ideas to solve your problem, sort those ideas into the listed categories. There's no right or wrong here, as the categories are simply a guide to help you spark your ideas. The most important aspect is to get all of those ideas on the diagram. Once completed, you can determine which areas you'll focus on first. Circle those areas, and honestly and literally, you remember what you selected. Now go learn things. Go work to gather more information. Try to fix the issue, practicing PDCA, or rule out possibilities. Bring your team back together to share your findings. If any of those things didn't work or didn't turn out to be the root cause, then cross them off the fishbone and move on to the next step. You can even add more to your diagram based on what you learned. It's creativity and organization all in one. I remember working with a team of people who were trying to solve a pretty important problem. The problem was listed as hot, top priority, drop everything to work on this, because the main person impacted was the head of the company. When I got involved in the situation, it was a proverbial bowl of soup sprinkled with a dash of chaos and a smidge of anxiety. They had so many ideas for how to solve this problem, but they had a few obstacles. They never kept track of what they were working on. They didn't document the outcomes of their investigations, and they had no idea if their individual contributions made a positive or negative impact on someone else's tasks. Yikes. I could just see all of the ingredients floating around in the proverbial soup, never cooking at the same time and certainly never meshing together to create a delectable result. I started drawing a fishbone diagram on the whiteboard. They all looked at me with blank stare, maybe the same face you're making right now as you're listening to this book. Most likely they were thinking, so what? How's that going to help us today? Or whatever, lady, we don't need some fancy tool to solve this. It's true, they might not have needed a fancy tool like this to help solve their problems, but their current tools weren't working, so why not? The problem was their inability to access company systems from a device. The problem statement looked similar to this. The leader of our company, John, can only access company systems from any of his 3 devices, phone, laptop, and tablet, when he was plugged into the system using an Ethernet cord, which means he's out of luck on Wi-Fi on his cellular. This has been happening over the last month. If he was on Wi-Fi, none of the systems could be accessed. I wrote the statement as the head of the fish. As the team shared with me their ideas of how to fix this situation or what to investigate further, I documented each of the suggestions on the fishbone diagram, giving my best guess on which category to place them under. There's no right or wrong here. The categories are just guides to help spark your ideas. The most important aspect is that we get all of those ideas on the diagram. After we completed the diagram, we reviewed and decided which of the ideas to focus on first. We held subsequent meetings to document the outcome of the investigation, crossing items off the drawing until finally we determined what was causing the problem and permanently fixed it. As I already mentioned, those standard categories are just a guide. Feel free to change them to work best for your situation. Is relocation in your future? What are all of the things you need to consider when buying a new house? Location, cost, taxes, upkeep, size of property, number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, basement, septic versus sewer, city water versus well, landscaping, safety, privacy, insurance, garage size, outbuildings, neighborhood bylaws, restrictions, sidewalks, playground, community pool, etc. This is not an exhaustive list, but it's still extensive. This is what I would list and what it would look like on a fishbone diagram. Think of the possibilities. You could take this wherever you go to look at houses. You could share it with your agent. It could serve as your checklist when walking through a house. This diagram outlines your requirements in a clear manner that's easy to understand. What would a fishbone diagram look like for decisions you're contemplating on a problem you're trying to solve? Maybe a fishbone diagram could help you decide if you're going to keep your kids learning virtually next year or if you're going to send them back to school. Create a fishbone for an issue at work that's bugging you the most. This could be the bait you need to kickstart your ideas and solve your process problems.